Hi there. Today I want to take you back, not so far, just a few decades, to a moment in time when everything changed. And it didn't change with a big explosion, a big headline, a big bang, but it changed with a quiet idea scribbled on a piece of paper. Our story begins in southwest London in 1955. A child is born to two British computer scientists, Mary Lee Woods and Conway Berners-Lee. Well, at that time, no one knew that Tim, their curious, bright-eyed son, would go on to invent something so profound that it would shape the world. And from the beginning, Tim was different. Everyone could see that. He was not loud or rebellious. At school, for example, he was quiet. Often he was scribbling in his notebook, sketching something, looking about machines, reading about electronics. In fact, he once rigged an old television to become a computer monitor at a time where most people didn't even know what a computer was. But then things started to get really interesting. Because Tim really wasn't a prodigy. He didn't went through school with perfect grades. In fact, his journey was an unexpected one. He had a lot of setbacks and distractions and detours, and he didn't went straight to university, but he managed to get into the Queen's College to study physics, not computer science. But then something happened. While at Oxford, Tim was caught hacking. And I don't mean in the modern cyber criminal sense, but he was poking into some restricted parts of the university computer system. And what happens then? It was crazy. Because he was banned from using university computers. So imagine that. The man who would invent the World Wide Web was forbidden to use computers. And yet, he didn't stop. Fast forward a bit. The year is 1989 and the world is holding its breath. And the reason for it is that the Berlin Wall was still standing, but not for long. You could already feel the cracks in the concrete. In a few months, Germans would go there and break it apart with hammers and fists, and the Iron Curtain will start to fall. And in the middle of this divided, buzzing continent sits a small little country called Switzerland. It is a neutral, wealthy, and quiet place, a place for banks, clocks, and beneath a few sleepy hills near Geneva, a scientific center called CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research. This is the birthplace of the Large Hadron Collider, the domain of particle physicists chasing nothing else than the origin of the universe. Yeah, you must imagine it like a place where atoms smash together and ideas are born. At that time, CERN is bursting with brilliant minds. So they're from all over the world, physicists, engineers, programmers, and they're all chasing the building blocks of reality. But there was a problem. And there was one problem which is so frustrating that it could bring science itself to a grinding halt. And the problem was that no one could find anything. There are infinite amounts of data being generated by the experiments, papers being published, documents being sorted or stored, pictures, videos, you name it. For example, papers are stored on floppy disks. The floppy disks are stored in a shelf somewhere or laying around on some desks. For example, data is locked inside machines that don't talk to each other. Because some of the computers run on Unix, some of them run on VEX, which is another operating system. And there's even some Macintosh laying around. It is like a bunch of brilliant people drowning in their own information flood. And one of them is Tim Berners-Lee. A British, very polite gentleman, like most of the British gentlemen. He's unassuming. And he's the kind of guy who would help you to fix your printer and then quietly win a Nobel Prize when you're not looking. Yeah, but actually, Tim wasn't trying to change the world. He just wanted to find a better way for him and his colleagues to share information. And so, in March of '89, he wrote a proposal. Just a little something for his boss to take a look. It was called Information Management, a Proposal. Yeah, actually, now this wasn't the kind of paper which sets rooms on fire. In fact, when his boss read it, he scribbled a note in the corner and he wrote there, vague but exciting. Yeah, but which is a kind of saying you might be onto something or not. But Tim kept at it. He had this idea. He had this fixed idea, this plan, this vision of something called hypertext. That's a text which could be linked to another text. And not just in one file or in one system, but anywhere. Across computers, across the globe, across all kind of infrastructure. But hypertext needed a few tools to really work. So Tim built 3 inventions. And with them, he stitched together the fabric of the modern web. First, HTML, hypertext markup language. Yeah, so if you think about computer, I think you must have heard about this. And the HTML is what tells the browser, look, this is a heading, this is a paragraph, here's a picture, here's a link. Actually, HTML doesn't make the things look pretty, but without it, web pages would just be digital soup. So you could not read anything. Now, the second thing he created was HTTP, the Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It's the courier of the web. Whenever you click on a link, HTTP carries your request across the world, finds the document or thing you're looking for, and brings it back to you, like a digital pigeon, but a very fast and nerdy one. So HTML and HTTP. Now the third thing which he created was URL, the Uniform Resource Locator. And that's the web address. It's actually the thing where you type into the top of the browser. It's the URL, which is the address. Think of it like a GPS coordinates of a piece of content which you are looking on the internet. Without the address or without the URL, you would be lost in a digital void. Now, by the end of 1990, Tim and his colleague Robert Cailliau built the first web browser. It was called World Wide Web. Yeah, very original name. And they launched also the first website on a Next computer in Tim's office. And that website was just a plain page which explained the World Wide Web which they just had created. Now, let's just pause for a minute and think about it. Now you know that the first website ever created on the world was a website about websites. Isn't that mind-blowing? But here's where the story gets really interesting. Because Tim could have patented his idea, he could have sold it, locked behind a paywall. Imagine, for example, a world where every click costs $1 or where linking required a license. But Tim didn't do that. He just gave it away. In 1993, CERN, the particle physicist powerhouse, released the World Wide Web into the public domain. Isn't that amazing? No copyrights, no conditions, just a simple plain gift to humanity. And that is when the web truly woke up. Suddenly, you didn't need $1 million or supercomputer to build something. All you needed was a connection. You get hooked into the internet and you're ready to go. It's free, ladies and gentlemen. And within a few years, the web exploded. Pages multiplied, links tangled. It grew like a rainforest, messy, wild, alive, and chaotic. But it was beautiful. It brought people together and it pulled them apart. It gave us instant knowledge and endless misinformation. It brought us Wikipedia and conspiracy forums. It gave us freedom and destruction and connection and surveillance. All of this from a man's quiet idea in a Swiss lab, trying to solve a filing problem. Yeah, sometimes I wonder if Tim knew what he was unleashing. Did he feel the weight of it? Maybe. But either yes or no, he kept going. He kept moving. Because the web for him wasn't just a tool, it was a principle. It was a principle that information should be free. And that people should be connected. Yeah, today there are over 2 billion websites. And every time you open your browser, you're actually touching a piece of that original dream. And Tim, he didn't disappear into legend. He's still around there, fighting for an open web, for privacy, for transparency, for the soul of the very thing he created. So, dear listener, Next time you're online, reading a story, watching a tutorial, arguing on the comment section, take a moment. Remember the quiet man at CERN. The man who tied the world together with invisible threads and wove a web so vast even he couldn't predict what would crawl across. That's it for today. And if you like this content, make sure to follow this podcast or leave a like. I greatly appreciate your support.